Okay, before we get on to the review, we're going to go through a little bit of background information. If you're not here for all that jazz, just skip to the time code that will probably pop up on screen. Okay, babes? Okay. It's no secret that Disney is constantly looking to try to recreate and capitalize on their past successes, particularly with their animated films. You see this in their direct-to-DVD sequels, their spin-off TV shows, their live-action remakes, the Descendants franchise, and a heck ton of freaking books. In 2015, they started publishing a Twisted Tales series, which is an anthology series of books based around their animated films, but with a what-if spin. So, in short, it's very fanficky and very fan-servicey of an idea. Not necessarily a bad idea, but very fanficky. And it's also worth noting that this is far from Disney's first attempt to make a fanficky YA book based on their animated movies. In fact, in 2009, they started the Villains series by Serena Valentino, but that's like a whole other video. The author of this book is Elizabeth Lim, who actually started writing fanfiction around age 10 for Sailor Moon, Sweet Valley, and Star Wars. She graduated from Harvard with an A.B. in music and a secondary in East Asian studies. So she's like well prepared to write this book. And slightly relatable and slightly not relatable with the whole graduating from Harvard thing. But also in her interview, she stated that she loves turning to the original source of the tales. For Mulan, she grew up with various versions of the Chinese legend, dramas, movies, novelizations, and she loves returning to the sources for her research. So she actually prepared for this, so good on her. Also, not super important, but she also stated in that same interview that Mulan and Cinderella were some of her favorites. I don't know if she said this because she was paid to write books based on those characters, but if she's being honest, same fam, same. Cinderella and Mulan are like my two favorite Disney princesses. I'm basic.
Let's just get this out of the way. If you like fan fiction, if you like Disney's animated Mulan, and if you like YA novels or young adult novels, this is definitely a recommendation for you, and that's all you'll need. There's your spoiler-free review. If you like any of those things, just get the book and you don't have to worry about anything else. Unless, if you want a more in-depth review, you can keep sticking around. So, the premise of this book is, what if Mulan had to travel to the underworld? With a premise like that, you know that someone's gotta have to die. The book itself doesn't start where the movie started. It assumes you already watched it, and that you know that Mulan went to war to save her father and redeem herself for not being the perfect little girl she wanted to be. It assumes that you already know who Shang is, who Mushu is, who Qin Po is, and all the others. It starts about actually 2/3 into the movie, when the Chinese army is fighting with the Huns. Heck, it doesn't even start at the beginning of the war scene when they lost all their cannons. Instead, it starts when they still only have one left and the Huns are bearing down on them. This scene pretty much follows the movie verbatim, with Mulan start of the avalanche, but instead of Mulan being the one who gets stabbed by Shan Yu, it's Shang. The Chinese army then survives the avalanche due to the luck and Mulan's ingenuity. So, with Shang being the one out of commission, that unfortunately means the role in charge is gone to Shifu. And if you've seen the movie, you know that Shifu is an actual idiot. He's just all like, well, Shang's down, we can't exactly have the time to get a doctor, so let's just go instantly to the Emperor, let him know the Huns are down. Let's leave Shang to die. Mulan and the soldiers are more opposed to this idea. So, after much consideration and much backlash, Shifu then just says, fine, we can take Shang with us, but it's up to Ping to carry him. So, Mulan does. And as you've guessed, Mulan isn't the best doctor. She isn't someone who has lots of medical expertise. So, Shang doesn't really do very well. In fact, he does so poorly that in the middle of one of the nights, Mulan spots Shang's father, Captain Li, who is a ghost now, and is telling Shang not to die. That's always a positive experience, seeing the dead guy tell someone else not to die. Mulan then confronts the captain and asks if there's anything that she can do for him. He sets her then on a journey to the underworld to rescue Shang's soul. She is later joined by the Li's family guardian lion, Shishi, who is almost as prideful as Mushu, but also a bit more loyal and very much boastful of his family, and more. So when they get down to the underworld, or the DU as it's known to be called, they then meet King Yama, who's in charge of the place, obviously. Despite the tussle that Mulan had to have with the guards outside, he is surprisingly okay with her request. He's probably honestly just really bored at this moment. But he does give them the whole spiel of, if you don't leave by the end of the night, you will all have to stay with me. So, Mulan and Shishi eventually do find Shang and then convince him to live. They then have to fight to navigate the maze of the DU. Most of their problems come from the demons trying to stop them, or the ghosts that hate them because they're still alive, or the Lady of Forgetfulness who is Ming Po. Ming Po is actually the main antagonist of this novel, but she's not exactly evil, she just wants to make it difficult for them, because, if anyone could just waltz in and take a soul, things might be a bit more chaotic here. They also run into a snag when Shang finds out that Mulan is a girl, and he eventually then throws a temper tantrum. But eventually the group makes it out alive. All having become stronger people. Before, though, they leave, they see that Captain Lee's there still. Apparently he's been hiding from King Yama's just so he could give the one last goodbye to his son. Aw, how sweet. Mulan and Shang then wake up unsure if what they see happened was real, but after talking, they then know it is. They head towards the Forbidden City, where Shang does plan on telling the Emperor that Mulan was a woman, and also his best soldier. Though this ending is kind of funny because the book avoids saying if Shan Yu's still dead or not, and it also doesn't let Shang get fully healed. So, for all we can see, we get to see a half-dead Shang go up against the Huns again, if the story is similar to the way it turns out in Mulan. Can you even imagine having a half-dead Shang trying to fight Shan Yu?
It'd be like a bad video game where they, injure you to half health, and then make you fight the final boss again.
Okay, Sora.
Okay, now that we've got the summary out of the way, we're going to talk about what we liked about this book. And I'll go first. Okay, one thing I really liked about this book was that it added more to Shang's anger at Mulan. In the movie, he's mainly just angry at her for keeping a secret from him and being a girl in the army. But in the book, we have this particular scene. Please understand, Mulan tried again. She moved closer to him until her shadow brushed against his glowing silhouette. I wanted to spare my father. I hoped to make him proud of me, the way you and your father...
Shang recoiled, his rigidness snapping. Do not speak of my father. You lied to him too.
I had no choice, Mulan bit back another protest. You should understand, Shang. I was trying to save you.
Understand? That I couldn't save my father when he needed me? So I should understand that you lied and deceived this entire army so you could save yours?
Basically, my interpretation of this is that he's jealous of Mulan. He's jealous that she was able to save her father when he couldn't save his, which I think adds a lot of depth to that fight and that anger between the two of them. Also, another thing I appreciated was that no one really cared that Mulan was a girl. Shishi, the guardian lion, didn't give a flip when Mulan was found out. Even when Captain Lee found out, he didn't really care, probably because he was dead, and when you're dead, you don't really care about gender roles anymore. Ming Po does kind of care, but only so much as she can manipulate Mulan and admire Mulan, because, she did the whole warrior woman thing, too, when she was alive, so, she thinks Mulan's pretty cool for doing that whole thing, but no one really cares that much. Heck, the people who probably cared most about Mulan's gender was Shang or even Mulan's ancestor family of ghosts that we meet. Though they cared more because, why are you a boy? We thought there was only a girl named Mulan. When did she have a brother named Ping? So, I guess when you're dead, no one really gives a flip of gender. Unless you're Shang, then you're just going to be very upset. Also, here are just two funny things I found was that none of Shang's family, other than his dad, are in DU. They're all, so perfect that they either went straight to heaven or straight to reincarnation. Meanwhile, Mulan's got a bunch of family hanging out there, so... The Lee family, perfect. Fa family, Also, another thing I liked that some might count against it is how fanficky this is. Like, it knows you're not here because you want an in-depth retelling. You want to skip to the goods, like a lot of fanfiction writers and authors and readers do. So it does that. It just skips to the good stuff, which and builds up for the new stuff, which is great.
Alrighty, that's my turn. So, from the get-go, I'm someone who's very fascinated in different Chinese culture and things that China has given us through some of their own mythologies. And it seems like this writer really knew their stuff. One thing that's very big in the book is something called the Mountain of Knives. And this is actually something that you see when you look at different mythologies of the underworld in Chinese mythos, basically. And it's really interesting to notice just like the accuracy of what they think of when you look at more of an Asian stylized underworld. It's a lot different than, I guess, the more Greek side. One other thing I really liked in this book was the relationship that we got to see with Shang and Captain Lee. We don't get to see a lot of that in the movie. We see a few bits and pieces of where basically Shang wants to be more like his dad. But in this one, we get a really good story. Ultimately, that results in Shang trying to follow his dad into one of the wars when he was just a kid. And once Captain Lee finds out that Shang wanted to go to war with him, he instantly stopped he stopped all the horses and told him to get off. And he forced Shang to go walk home. And he only got a few minutes in before Captain Lee finally just decided he was going to go pick him up and go take him home himself. But the best part about that was at the end when he told and basically promised Shang that if he did his studies, if he did everything that he was supposed to as a boy, and then trained to be able to join the army, he would do his absolute best to help him go to war with him, so that Shang and Captain Lee would be able to go to battles and do things together in the army. And it's just awesome to see kind of that motivation that gave Shang to become the captain that he was in the movie. To be able to see all of the efforts that he gave into trying to be the very best they could be. And it showed just how much he looked up to Captain Lee, which was something we didn't really get in the movie. A fun thing we also got to see was Mulan growing up. Again, we don't get to see a lot of more of like the childhood of Mulan or how she grew up. But we do know it's more of a traditional Eastern Asian setting. And one thing that we got to see in the book is just a little bit of how she grew up and why she was different than some of the other girls. And as much as I hate that kind of critique of, oh, this one hero is different than all the other girls in the world, this one at least explains it a little bit, where when other girls her age were supposed to be getting ready for matchmaking or get ready for doing more of the traditional girl parts that the Chinese traditions had, her dad kind of just let her do whatever, knowing that once she got married, she'd be having to be forced into the Chinese tradition and the roles that that kind of tradition set for those genders. And it was good because it also got to see how much Mulan got to really love her dad and why she was the way she was and why she would stop at nothing to try to protect her dad. Because her dad was ultimately the reason why she wasn't like every other girl out there, because she wasn't necessarily nurtured in the same way. Because, Fa Zhao was a much better, well, I want to say better father, but he's a much more free fighting father. He wanted Mulan to have fun and to do whatever that she could to become a better individual, and ultimately she liked to ride horses a lot more. So I started reading a few of the other Twisted Tale books that we could, just to kind of compare it to see what was different with the Mulan Reflection one. And one thing that I feel is very standoutish is that the writing style of this book is a lot more engaging than some of those other ones, in the sense that it really puts you into that position and it puts you into the mindsets of those characters. I really enjoyed, you got to see a lot of Mulan's emotions, you got to see a lot of Shang's emotions, plus you also got to see some of the awkwardness and the embarrassment that they all felt when things would happen. This is just really fun writing style, and the way that it's portrayed really makes you feel like you're in the DU, that you're in the underworld traveling with them and seeing just the great sights that they get to see. And that is something that I really appreciate about this book, because it's not just something that just, I want to say like reads like the traditional book, but it lets you read the book while being inside the book as well. It's something that just engages the readers and it makes them want to continue reading this.
So, you'd say this is a recommendation?
I would say this is a recommendation.
Now, the real question is it better than the 2020 movie? I don't know. I haven't seen it, and neither have you.
No, I haven't. Why would you try to ask me to compare something I haven't seen?
I'm not asking. I'm just saying that's the question. But it's not one we can answer.
Nope.
Okay, so what was your absolute favorite thing?
I think my favorite thing was the relationships we got to see in the book. Mainly the relationship of Shang and Mulan, Shang and his father, Mulan and her father, and Shi and the Li family.
I think my favorite thing kind of ties into that too, with the whole Shang being jealous that Mulan saved her daddy. Because, like, that honestly recontextualizes that one scene in the movie where he spares her life. Because, like, suddenly it's not just him being upset that his whole notions of gender roles are being challenged, that someone he completely trusted lied to him, like, which is all deep stuff. But it's also jealousy that he's so angry at her. Jealous that she did something he can never do. He can never get back his dad. He can never go save him. But Mulan did save her father. And he is jealous of that, and it just recontextualizes that, which I think is a great sign of a good fanfic, or heck, good book.
And especially since we get to see that Shang's big reasoning for being in the army is just so he could have his war with Daddy. And he never gets it.
He wanted to be with Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to work with Daddy. And then Daddy died.
It's so sad.
Okay, cringiest part.
The cringiest part is probably when Shang starts asking Ping about Mulan.
Yes.
And Ping is trying to steer the conversation away so she doesn't have to describe herself as another person.
And it's so cringy because Shang is very clearly thinking about, I need to get married. And Ping has a sister named Mulan. And I like Ping. If I married Mulan, I'd be Ping's brother-in-law. I like that. And it's just so, stop, Shang, stop, no, you're creeping.
But the Fa family,
who apparently have so many terrible people in the TU.
Hey, but apparently all they know is that the Fa family and the Li family had a relationship in the war 30 years prior.
That they remember, but not how many kids the Fa family has now.
Nope. I thought they only had one. I'm the second one they don't talk about. Well, I wonder why. Because you're in the DU.
Okay, worst bit. My worst bit is probably the Shang tempo tantrum, I'm leaving you, when he finds out that Ping is Mulan. Because, like, in the movie, he finds out on accident because of the whole injury doctor thing. But in the book, she tells Shang because she doesn't want there to be any mistrust between them anymore. And she wants to be completely honest with him. And he is just so upset that he walks off with Shishi. And even Shishi's going, dude, she came in here, risked her life, risked being stuck in hell for you, bruh. For you, bruh. And you're ditching her just because she told one little lie?
That is a very fair point. I guess my worst thing would probably be the fact that there's no Mushu in this book. Mulan literally leaves Mushu back in the camp when she goes to the DU, just going, yeah, he'll be fine.
That's fair. So, like, Mushu's asleep during this whole thing, and he wakes up, and he's like, what happened to you?
Yep.
And Mulan's like, I'll tell you about it later. But I kind of get why. We didn't want constant Shi and Mushu bickering. And if it was Mushu and Mulan and Shang, the secret would have been blabbed by Mushu.
Big time.
Like, I get why Elizabeth Lim wrote Mushu out, but dear lord, Shi and Mushu bickering would have been hilarious. I have the better family. No, I have the better family. Prove it! I'll fight you! Well, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think we got majority of my points on across.
all much better put than my points.
You're good with your points.
Uh-huh. Alright. Signing off. Like, subscribe, and share. Probably.
Click the bell.